Welcome to session 1. In this course, we have 4 essential tasks that we're trying to complete. Number 1, we have to restore meaning to the word abortion. Secondly, we have to simplify the debate for those who think it's a complex issue. And number 3, we have to offer a sound, reasonable, and coherent argument. And then finally, we have to be able to answer the objections of pro-abortion rhetoric. Now, this is our overall plan for the workshop. I want you to take just a minute and think about the logical order of these steps. Think about why it might be important to restore meaning to the word abortion before you try to offer your reasons against it, or why it might be more effective to simplify the issue before you start trying to offer your argument against it, or even answer the pro-abortion rhetoric. In fact, take just a minute if you want to pause the video, do that. Take just a minute, think about this carefully. You might even want to write these 4 tasks down and commit them to memory, because they'll help you organize your thoughts whenever anyone comes up and engages you in this topic and conversation. This is what we're up against. And if you think about it, this list is pretty daunting. Pro-choice advocates defend abortion on the basis of choice, poverty. They try to make it an economic issue, a matter of privacy between a woman and her doctor. I can't afford another child. This is an extremely inconvenient time to be pregnant. What about my college education? What about my future? What about my career? All of these things come into play and are brought into play. Even physical defect issues. So there's this whole range of justifications that people use, and it's important that we understand and recognize that many of them have a lot of emotional power, a lot of emotional impact. But what I want you to see here and understand is that these common justifications actually all turn out to be irrelevant when you think about it, because they avoid the real issue. And the real issue is abortion itself. These are talking about all the peripheral issues, not abortion itself. And so our first task that we want to address, and that's what session 1 is about, is we've got to restore meaning to the word abortion. The problem we face is that in our society, in our culture, the word abortion has lost almost all of its meaning, but there is a way to restore it. And I want to illustrate this by showing you the cover of a Time magazine issue. And on it, it's a story that covers AIDS in Africa. And on it, you're going to see that in this tiny script here, it says, this is a story about AIDS in Africa. Look at the pictures, read the words, and try not to care. Look at the pictures, read the words, and try not to care. This is a very powerful set of phrases here, and that's all that's on the cover, other than this evocative photo of a mother and child that are dying of AIDS in Africa. But notice the formula. Look at the pictures, listen to the story, and try not to care. You see, the writers at Time magazine understand something very important. We are moved by pictures and stories. And this is the first reason why the word abortion has lost its meaning in our culture. We think and learn visually. Pictures and stories it influences us by stirring our emotions. And of course, this profoundly affects the way that we resolve moral issues. And this is, by the way, one of the standard reasons that graphic images have been a part and a means of moral education. You want to educate someone quickly and in a powerful way, a picture is worth 1,000 words. But when people hear the word abortion, what are some of the images that they think of? What do you think are the first things that come to mind? Now, I know what probably comes to mind for you, because you're already involved and you're already familiar with what's going on. You know the truth about abortion. But for the average person, what do you think What kind of images do you think come to mind? I'll give you a hint. What are some of the most common images used in media coverage on the abortion issue? Usually what people see and what people hear about are pro-life demonstrations that involve some kind of violence. The news coverage usually only shows the negative aspects. They'll show an abortion clinic that was bombed, or an abortion provider that was shot and killed. And these are horrible. These are terrible things. But these are just such a small percentage of what pro-life people are really about and what they're involved in. But yet that's what you see on the media, and so that has influenced the larger culture's opinion and perception of what pro-life people are doing and what we're about. So, and these things, I want you to notice, the most important thing to notice here is those images actually have nothing to do with abortion itself. These are things that have to do with the fight against abortion, even the positive ones, like if they show the pro-life rally in Washington, which that's kind of rare too, but when they do show it, even that, those have to do with the activism part, but they don't actually show what abortion is. And so most of the people that live around you and that you go to school with and that you work with really have no clue what abortion is, what abortion does to the unborn. And that's why this is so important, because for the most part, all of the images that influence people's thinking about abortion have been working against us. Now, there's a second reason why the word abortion has lost all meaning in our culture, and that's because people are moved by stories and facts. I mean, just think about it from your own experience, and you'll realize this is true. Someone can cite facts all day long until your eyes glaze over, but as soon as they insert an anecdote or a story to support their facts or illustrate their facts, the whole thing springs to life. And of course, the pro-abortion side has used this very effectively to their advantage. President Clinton is just one of many examples of this. When he defended his partial birth veto, he used, his veto of the partial birth abortion ban, he used stories, not facts, by inviting several women to come up on the stage with him and tell how the procedure had benefited them personally. He didn't give a moral justification. He didn't give scientific evidence to refute the fact that most partial birth abortions were performed on perfectly healthy women carrying perfectly healthy babies. He just gave stories. Now, there's nothing wrong with stories. In fact, we encourage true stories to be used. They're an important part of being persuasive. But a story can't replace the facts. They can't replace the evidence. And that's what he was doing. He was using them in place of the evidence. And you see that what happens is he turned the story from what abortion was actually doing to, the children that were being killed, to the mothers that he thought deserved our sympathy. And maybe these women do deserve our sympathy. But the question is does the level of sympathy they deserve justify them taking the life of their unborn child? This is the question that never gets asked. The story is told, it has its emotional impact, and people make their decisions based on a story. So the point is that the current debate in our culture around the topic of abortion consists primarily of stories, not facts and arguments. And of course, this is a deliberate tactic on the pro-abortion side because they don't have factual evidence to support their case. And that, for the most part, these stories are working against us, just like the images is what we want to be aware of here. Now, there's a third reason why abortion has lost its meaning in our culture. And basically it's because we just want our difficult problems to go away. We don't want to have to deal with it. We don't want to have to think about it. Actually, the root idea behind abortion advocacy is narcissism. Abortion is a symptom of a much deeper problem. We don't want to take personal responsibility to solve our own problems. We think we have the right to not be inconvenienced. We think we have the right to demand the difficult problems just go away. And this is the mentality that drives the entire abortion industry, and it's very effective. So what's our solution? Our challenge is, how do we restore meaning to the word abortion for people who think and learn visually, who prefer stories over facts, and who just want their problems to go away? The solution is that we need to move the debate from the abstract to the very concrete by using images and video. Now, I know that this is very often a very controversial topic, even among those in the pro-life movement. A lot of people are uncomfortable with using graphic images, and some of them have valid points to make. So I want to take some time here and just go through some of the solid reasons why this is a legitimate means of moral education and a legitimate means of changing people's minds. And here's the first reason why it's so important to use graphic images. They work. Many of you will remember that it was graphic images that helped turn the tide in the partial birth abortion debate. And in fact, there has been a palpable change in the general view about abortion since that debate. Graphic images of the partial birth abortion procedure, just in the line drawings, not in photographs, were enough to have a very powerful impact. Pro-lifers showed a 7-minute film called Art of Truth to a legislative committee during this debate on the bill. It didn't contain any partial birth abortion footage, but it did show pictures of babies who had been killed through D&E and suction abortion. And this is what shifted the discussion from choice to killing babies. The viewers could not ignore what they saw, what abortion actually did when they saw this film. This was the first time that pictures and charts and videos had been used and brought into chambers, and we saw a remarkable response against abortion. As a result, the percentage of those who thought abortion should be legal under any circumstances dropped from 33% to 22%. Why? Because for the first time in 25 years, the debate was about the act of abortion itself, not about all the rabbit trails and how it was about how it affects the unborn, not the other issues. Now, I want you to think for just a minute about your own feelings about using graphic images. Like I said, I know this can be controversial. People usually take a very positive or a very, very negative view of this. But I want you to think about your own feelings for just a minute. And regardless of how you feel, I want you to think of what might be some good reasons for using graphic visuals. Even though you don't prefer to use them, you don't want to use them, just try to come up with some good reasons for using graphic images and jot them down at your notes. Again, if you want to pause the video, just make a note of those things. Here's the point we're trying to make. A pro-life strategy that combines graphic imagery with hard-hitting facts and arguments can win in the court of public opinion. It happens repeatedly. People see the graphics, they change their minds, or they get their head out of the sand, and then they go in the opposite direction. And that is exactly what happened to me. I actually had 2 abortions, one when I was 18 and one when I was 20. At 24 years old, I went through a process where I became a Christian. And during that time, I realized what I had done. And I grieved over what I had done, over the loss of those children. I received forgiveness and went through some counseling for that. And know that God forgave me without a doubt, okay? But I'm sorry to tell you that from that moment on, once I had resolved the issue for myself, my own personal guilt, and how it affected me and how it affected my children, I hardly ever thought about it again. It was actually not until about 5 years ago, I was preparing to give a speech for a speech class, and had to be a persuasive speech, and so I had come up with a list of topics. I wanted it to be about something that mattered, something important, so I chose to do the speech on abortion. And it was during that time, for the first time, that I actually did the research, and I was confronted with all of the facts, all of the data, and for the first time in my life, the photos of aborted babies and the procedures that made up abortion. The only way I can explain it to you, it was like somebody literally flipped a switch in my mind. I knew at that point, I understood for the first time really, really how evil and horrific abortion was. And I knew at that moment that I could no longer be complacent, that I had to do something. And since that time, I've done everything I can to educate myself, help educate others. I've been involved with other pro-life groups, trying to support them, even started LifeMinded in an effort to help others come to the same realization that I had. But the point I'm trying to make is that, turning my own life around and, getting my own abortions resolved was enough to help me become pro-life personally, but it wasn't enough to move me from being complacent to being active. It was the pictures that changed my mind and changed my heart. And that's what I'm trying to get across here. So, there's lots of other examples of this. Abby Johnson, it was the same thing. I'm sure many of you are familiar with her story. She was a manager of an abortion clinic down in Texas, had actually never sat in on an abortion procedure this one particular morning because of certain circumstances. She actually had to come in and assist with an ultrasound procedure. And Abby describes it in her book, and I've heard her speak, how she literally, on the screen, all of a sudden she saw, for the first time, a 13-week-old perfectly formed baby fighting for its life, struggling to pull away from the suction machine. And she knew in a moment that she had to get out. And she did. Not only did she get out of the abortion industry, but she has become a very strong proponent for life and has gotten involved with and joined the ranks with the 40 Days for Life group. So there's lots of other examples of how people have seen an image. They saw, an ultrasound, they saw pictures, or they saw a video, and it had a powerful impact on them, changed their heart, changed their mind about abortion, because they saw what abortion really was. You can't deny it when you see the photos. For the last 100 years, photography has shaped and informed public opinion almost like nothing else. Photographs have been instrumental in the exposure and elimination of some of modern history's most notorious injustices. I want to show you a few examples from the Life's 100 Photographs That Changed the World, which many of you may be familiar with. Maybe you've seen them. It was published in 2003, and it's available in any bookstore. But if you haven't, I do want to warn you, there are some graphic images in here that are hard to look at. So please feel free, to skip over those. I just want to warn you that they are coming. In his 1910 Breaker Boys, in 1908, the National Child Labor Committee hired Lewis Hine to capture photographs of some of the nation's 2 million children working in mines, mills, and on the streets. And in this photograph, it was 1910 Breaker Boys photograph from South Pittston, Pennsylvania, is one of the pictures that helped sway public opinion in a way that cold statistics had not. And this photo, the circulation of this photo, led to the enactment of laws banning child labor. Here's a hard one to look at. In 1930, one of the most famous lynching photos was taken in Marion, Indiana. These lynching photos were actually made, if you can believe this or not, made into postcards designed to boost white supremacy. But the tortured bodies and grotesquely happy crowds in the pictures ended up revolting people and turning the public opinion against white supremacy groups. Then photos like this one taken by Larry Burroughs, as well as the real-time video footage that many of us watched in our living rooms during the conflict in Vietnam, did as much as anything to turn public opinion against the war. Then Don McCullen's photography of starving children in Nigeria has helped spur a worldwide effort to intervene with help. And lastly, for decades, the history of the Holocaust has been taught with disturbing images, but images that are indispensable because they tell and communicate the horror that raged in the death camps. So you can see just from this handful of illustrations how graphic images have the potential to restore meaning to the word abortion like nothing else can, if they're used appropriately. People may forget what you say, but they seldom forget what they see. Now, I know there's objections. I had mentioned that earlier. Some of them are legitimate, and some people just not completely thought through. So I want to take just a minute to walk through some of these common objections. Sometimes people object to using graphic imagery by charging that it's emotionally manipulative. But there's three reasons why this just simply isn't the case. First of all, as we've already shown, graphic tools are used to teach about all kinds of moral issues. It's a standard, honored technique in moral education. Graphic images inform us about important moral issues like ethnic cleansing, embassy bombings, the World Trade Center destruction, anti-smoking campaigns, and even animal rights campaigns. Secondly, graphic visual tools are emotional because they tell the truth. And the truth can be upsetting. The important question is not, are the pictures emotional, but are the pictures true? And if true, they ought to be admitted as evidence, even though they are emotional. Third, graphic images are used to support our argument, not replace it. Graphic images expose the truth instead of distorting it. The goal is not to manipulate people emotionally. The goal is to convey the truth in a way that better than words ever could. The second common objection that's commonly used is that pictures shouldn't be shown because they're offensive. Now, if you think about this, think about why they're offensive, okay? You see, these images are often offensive because they depict something that is deeply offensive in nature. The killing of a defenseless human child. And this is why Greg Cunningham from the Center for Bioethical Reform sums it up this way. He says, if something is so horrifying that we can't stand to look at it, then we ought to not be tolerating it. So the issue here is not if something is offensive or not. Showing pictures is offensive or going to offend people. Abortion itself is the offensive. It's the offending problem here. And this is what people need to know, what abortion is. And they see it through the pictures. And then finally, people will object to using graphic images because they think that it's going to create an unnecessary emotional burden on a woman who's had an abortion. But like I already mentioned, and I want you to consider the fact that, avoiding using graphic images doesn't cause the people who've been involved in an abortion to avoid pain. They're already in pain. What you may actually be inadvertently doing, though, is helping them to avoid healing. Because by using graphic images, you're giving them an opportunity to confront their sin and to be able to find the healing and the forgiveness that they need. The key here is to learn how to use graphic images wisely. Pro-lifers often make one of two mistakes. They either use them poorly by springing them on people and don't give them any kind of warning at all, or they don't use them at all. We think that there is a better way here. There's a third alternative. Use them wisely. Of course, we always want to be winsome. We want to be as sensitive as possible, but we must always be truthful. And here's how to accomplish all three. First of all, get to my slide here. We need to consider our audience. Always warn your audience that the pictures or the video that you're about to show them contains graphic images. We want to always communicate to them that the brutality of inhumanity of abortion. Darn it. Okay, see if I can fix that. First of all, consider your audience. Not everyone who responds the same way to the same material. Sometimes just a written or verbal description of abortion is enough. Other times using films such as 9 Months or the Nova series that show fetal development, the beautiful images of fetal development, make the point clear. They don't address abortion directly, but they do speak to the value of the unborn. Of course, you'll still have to connect the dots for your audience. I mean, they're not going to necessarily know what abortion is just by looking at prenatal pictures. And you'll have to walk them through that. And you can do that in the context of the conversation you're having with them. But for others, illustrative drawings of abortion procedures are enough, rather than the more graphic photos, can be enough to convince them of the inhumanity and brutality of abortion. But regardless of which tool that you use, it is the inhumanity and the brutality of abortion that must be communicated. Otherwise, people are going to go right on imagining abortion to be nothing more than a benign procedure that just removes a tissue mass from the mother. The second important thing we have to always do when we're using graphics, and to use them wisely, is to always warn your audience. Always let people know that the pictures of the video that you're about to show them contain graphic pictures. Okay? Enough said. Tell them. Warn them. Give them the opportunity to look away if they don't want to watch. And don't make them feel embarrassed about that choice. Make that perfectly okay. Third, we want to give them the option of seeing them or not, like I just said. Fourth, we want to always be conscious that we may be talking to women who have had abortions, that they may be in our audience. And so we always want to make sure to tell them the purpose of our presentation or this conversation or showing these graphic images is not to condemn them, it's not to judge them, but it's to clarify a moral issue, and that it's important to that end. And then fifth and finally, whenever we're talking to a Christian audience, we always want to mention that our Lord is eager to forgive the sin of abortion, and then you can give them the opportunity for confession and repentance. So these are our 5 steps when we're using graphic images. Consider your audience, warn your listeners, advise them that they can look away, assure them that your motive is not to make people feel bad, but that you just want to clarify a moral issue. And then 5, you can talk about the forgiveness that's available in Christ. All right, now I have a video that I recently discovered that was put together by Abort73.com called An Overview of Abortion in 5 Minutes. And I want to show it to you. I think it's going to be an excellent tool for pro-lifers like us because it has a very balanced approach. While it does contain a few of the graphic images of aborted children, which is necessary, and some of the illustrative drawings showing the abortion procedure, it also includes some of the beautiful images of fetal development, and it's graphically presented in a very hard-hitting, factual, statistical way. You'll see what I'm talking about. So, as I've already mentioned, there are some graphic images in this video. So, if you don't want to see them, I want you to know you don't have to. Of course, you don't have to watch this film. I strongly encourage you to watch it. When it comes, when a picture flashes on the screen, if you don't want to see it, you can close your eyes, and then just wait for the next image. But like I said, there's just a few of them, and they're closer to the middle and to the front of the video. And once you get past them, then they're done with. So I will start the video, and then once the video is done, that's going to conclude session 1. And our next session, we're going to be talking about the one question that resolves the entire abortion debate and how to answer that question. See you then.